A letter dated 13th of July 1998 was sent to the Vice Squad at Scotland Yard. It read, "I supply here information which, if looked into by one of your officers, will yield a secret life not unlike that of," name redacted. "I cannot give you my name as I am too closely involved and do not wish to be in the limelight." The letter described Savile's homosexuality and spoke of him being involved with a rent boy who had been given Savile's number in Leeds. The telephone number had been changed after Savile had received threatening calls from the rent boy, who was going to the press and exposing his paedophilia if he did not give him more money. The letter continued, "He thinks he is untouchable because of the people he mixes with." It concluded, "When Jimmy Savile falls, and sooner or later he will, a lot of well-known personalities and past politicians will fall with him." The letter was forwarded to the Met's Organised Crime Paedophile Unit as well as West Yorkshire Police, who of course later lost it. Nothing was followed up. How easy would it have been to actually check if Savile had in fact changed his telephone number? Isn't blackmail worth investigating? Wasn't it worth digging deeper to find out if in fact Savile was a practicing paedophile? The officer who initially took the anonymous letter has spoken out and revealed that he did in fact send a copy to West Yorkshire Police. He also revealed that it was common knowledge among his colleagues that Jimmy Savile was a paedophile. He believed that one of his colleagues had been investigating Savile in 1989. The Jimmy Savile case is unique in so many ways. He was an odd and highly complex character whom the masses loved. He was part of our culture, synonymous with Radio 1, Top of the Pops, and Jim'll Fix It, which I grew up on. We celebrated his celebrity. We repeated his catchphrases like "now then, now then." We laughed when comedians did impressions of him. From humble beginnings, he reached the highest levels of society. He was brought in as a marriage guidance counsellor when Prince Charles and Diana were having trouble. It's one thing to assume that he conned Prince Charles into helping him and Princess Diana into helping him, and on it goes. But why on earth would the royal family bring Jimmy Savile in as a marriage guidance counsellor for Princess Diana and Charles? Wouldn't you have to have security clearance and trust at the highest level?
You know as well as I do, Shaun, I've worked in some secure places and my background is Chet Foley. And I mean Chet Foley, my mum and dad, your nan and granddad. It goes back years upon years and they will pull you to bits left, right and centre. Now, the horrific thing for me is that Jimmy Savile had his own room in Clarence House. Now, Prince Charles and Lady Diana trusted him, as well as the Queen, as well as the other known Andrew, who's currently under investigation. But he had his own flat. And the power that he had was he could sack Prince Charles and Lady Diana's staff, which he has done. They trusted him to the extent that they could sit down and have a conversation about their marriage. He was seen as, by them as well, a demigod. No, Jimmy can't do no wrong. You know what I mean? It's horrific to think that that man was round the children or round the future king. You know what I mean? There's no story there that suggests anything went on, but if given a chance.
Do you think that there's a degree of looking the other way? Because if Prince Charles's mentor was Lord Mountbatten,
Yeah.
who had a history of that activity, do you think there's like an acceptability factor whereby it's not that a big deal to them? I mean, if they've done the background checks on him and they've discovered this stuff.
I'm going to say in them days, I mean, what we've got to understand is we're living in an age now where nothing is acceptable. Okay, and it should never been acceptable anyway. But you're going back to a time in the 70s when, you know, somebody on top of the pots will touch somebody's leg or backside or whatever.
Have you seen the clip of Savile doing that?
I've seen it many a times. You see him on Jim Will Fix It when he's got his arms around the girls, and you can see where the hands are going. But you're talking about the 70s, 60s, when women were treated slightly different to what they are now. They wasn't expected, you know, they were expected to keep quiet. Not just Savile, you're talking about, as you rightly say, Lord Mountbatten. There's history in a royal family of certain things going on. You could go back to Jack the Ripper. You know, was a part of the royal family involved in that? There's a lot of secrets there hidden that we'll never know about. Thatcher, you know, they all, whether Prince Charles knew what was going on, I don't know. I can't answer that, and I can't answer whether Princess Diana knew. You know what I mean? They just see a mask, and what was hidden behind the mask was quite horrific.
Do you think that the royals should have done more, exercise more scrutiny of his background rather than allow him to access the highest level of their circles?
I can tell you this, that if you try to get into a Category A prison today, you will have the most stringent security checks done, and then you still might not get in. Right? You're telling me that Prince Charles, with the MI5 and MI6 in his own security staff and own security team, and you've got Princess Di and she's got her entourage, and you've got the Queen and all this mixing about, and not one single one of them had the brains and the wits to think, let's do an in-depth security check on Mr. Savile before we let him in here, let alone him with 100 yards of this royal family. But no, they didn't. And that comes back to Mountbatten, and it's almost as if it's like, oh, well, don't worry about it.
That's the big question for British society. How did he get away with it? 6 decades of abuse, and there are numerous examples from across the country and indeed within his own family of where children spoke out, tried to tell people in authority about what happened. But I think we were all taken in. You could say he groomed a nation.